Story time about why I beat up my best friend. So a little background information. Her and I had been best friends since we were in 7th grade. Her family was rich, mine was poor, and at first she was a really good friend. She was always there for me whenever I needed her. Until our freshman year of high school, which is when her and I started hanging out with boys. Now, my mom was kind of strict. She wouldn't really let me hang out with boys, but her mom was more lenient about her hanging out with boys. Every weekend, she would throw a party at her house, and she would throw them in her attic because 1, it was huge, and 2, her parents didn't give a fuck what she did up there. Anyways, she would always offer to do my hair and makeup before the party started, which always made me really excited because I never really put any work into my physical appearance. Well, little did I know, the only reason why she would offer to do my hair and makeup at these parties was so that way she could make me look like shit in front of all the boys. So after that, I taught myself how to do my own makeup and do my own hair, like for part 2.
Story time! So this situation happened when me and my friend group had just started 7th grade. And one of my friends in the group had already gotten detention for not finishing her homework. And keep in mind that this was a very strict teacher, so no one liked him. We'll call him Mr. Brown. So when the class found out that Mr. Brown gave Sophie detention for not finishing her homework, everyone thought that it was really unfair. A couple weeks go by and Sophie hated the teacher. And I'm pretty sure he hated all of us too. So then this one day, me, Sophie, and the rest of the group decided that we were tired of going to Mr. Brown's class just to get yelled at, so we decided that we were going to skip his class for that day. At the end of the period, we were walking to our next classes when we ran into Mr. Brown. He called us and pulled us aside, and he asked us where we were and why we weren't in his class today. We told him that we had all gone to the office, but he didn't believe us, so he gave all of us detention except for Sophie. In front of all of us, he told her to meet up with him after school and that she was going to spend detention in his class while we had it in a different class across the school.
Story time. I had a new client come over last week. Met her off of Facebook and she wanted extra long nails. I was super excited because those are my favorite. When she arrived, she seemed a little bit upset. I asked her what was wrong and she let me know she had IBS. IBS is a stomach issue problem. I told her I'd try to be as fast as possible and I quickly put the tips on, shaped them up and had them looking really good and sharp. There was a lot of dust, so I asked her to go wash her hands, but she was kind of in there for a while. Eventually she came out and she sat down. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, she smelled like air freshener and diarrhea. I turned on my nail fan to kind of blow the smell away. And as I go to lay the acrylic down, I realize the smell is coming from her hands. And y'all, that's not even the worst fucking.
One time I was behind the register at Victoria's Secret. This customer walks in and immediately everybody spots her as a red flag. She's just picking up items, throwing them in her bag, not looking at sizes, not looking at colors. So everybody's like, Everyone's on their walkie like, watch this customer. She's coming to the fitting room. She's headed to the cash wrap. Somebody get her. Check her ID. Get her. Get her. She has a bag full of stuff. And guess who gets her at the register? Me. So she comes to my register and she dumps out her stuff and we're having a regular conversation. Hi, how are you? Yada, yada, yada. Her total comes up to probably between $700 to $900. It was expensive. My manager is at the register next to me talking to me on the walkie. Ashley, make sure you get that ID. Don't matter what she's using, make sure you get that ID. So I ask her for the ID because she's paying credit. Why do you need to ask for my ID? Just take it, run it. I'm like, no ma'am, I'm sorry, I need your ID for the purchase. She starts to raise her voice at me.
Story time! Okay guys, I'm not the type to get sick at all. I get sick like once or twice a year. But because I don't get sick, that one time that I do get sick, it's really bad. So this situation happened when I was 13 and it was February. And because you guys don't know this either, for some reason, ever since I was 10 years old, something bad always happens to me the first 3 weeks of February. So like I said, I was 13 when this happened. I was sick and I remember I got up one morning, got ready for school, and my mom took me. When we got to the school, my mom was like, are you sure you want to go? And I was like, no, to be honest, I really don't want to go to school. So she was just like, okay, well, let me go talk to the front lady because they already called me saying that they were going to send you to court if you miss school again. We went inside and my mom was talking to the front lady and she obviously seen that I was sick. So she told my mom, she was like, okay, I'll let Stephanie miss one more day, but after that she can't anymore because she's going to get sent to court. And my mom was like, okay, thank you. I'll make sure she doesn't miss school anymore. After that, we left the school and my mom had a few things to do. So she was like, you're just going to come with me. So our first stop was this healthcare place. We walked into the building and there was a lot of people there, so we got into the line. And as I'm standing there, I got really hot. It literally felt like someone put me in an oven and then my head started hurting. And then about 3 seconds after that happened, I noticed that I was bleeding from the left side of my nose. So I told my mom I'll be right back.
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid, and I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend." So then she called one of my other best friends and said, "No, it actually wasn't an accident." And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2.
Story time about my psychotic best friend. So we're gonna call this girl Gia. So a little background information. This all happened whenever I was in 9th grade. I saw Gia sitting at this lunch table alone and I invited her to come sit with my friends and I. And after talking to her, I found out that she was a new student and she didn't have any friends. So her and I started hanging out and we became really close. Like she would come over my house 24/7. Well, my older sister was a grade above us and she would act really weird around her. And by weird, I mean like she would always make fun of me in front of my sister. And weirdly enough, try to cause problems between us. My sister didn't really like her. She thought that she was weird. But because she was my friend, she was being super nice to her. Well, like a month later, she started trying to become best friends with my sister. Like any conversation she would have, I would be like, "Oh, do you want to come over?" She would be like, "No, sorry, I'm hanging out with your sister today." And I would go home and I would be like, "Hey, are you hanging out with Gia today?" And my sister would be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like for part 2.
Girls, tell me about a time where your quick thinking probably saved your life. I'll go first. 2 years ago, I was walking my dog at the park and a man approached me and asked to take a picture of her. And I said yes, because why not? It's a picture of a dog. So he starts taking a picture of my dog, and then I realized that he was like holding up her collar, and then it hit me. My address is on that collar. He's not taking a picture of my dog, he's taking a picture of my address. So I told him that I actually didn't feel comfortable with him having a picture of my dog, and I asked him to delete it. So he deletes it and then like starts walking away really fast. And I was like, "Excuse me, sir, no, could you also go into your deleted album and delete it from there?" And he goes, "I don't have a deleted album." And I was like, "You have an iPhone, everybody has a deleted album, could you please delete the picture?" And he was like, "Sorry, I don't have a deleted album," and like keeps walking away. And keep in mind, this is like 2 PM in a park, like there's other people around. So now I'm like chasing after him and I'm telling him, "Sir, I know you have the album, I will show you where the album is, can you please go onto your phone so that we can delete the picture?" Oh, part 2.
This is why waking up late might just save your life. One day when I was in elementary school, my mom and I both overslept, which meant I wouldn't be ready in time to get on the bus. School started at 8, my bus pickup time was at 7, and it was already 6:40 or something. I was still in my PJs and hadn't even had breakfast yet. My mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to go on ahead and she would take me to school, which would give me plenty of time to get ready. It's 6:50, I'm in my PJs eating breakfast, and that's when we hear the bus pull up 10 minutes earlier than scheduled. My mom peeks her head out of the door into the foggy morning and waves the bus on. She closed the door and came back inside, but the bus didn't pull away. There's a knock at the door and my mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver uniform. He explains he's a substitute bus driver because the regular driver called in sick and that he's early because he wanted to get an early start on the route. My mom says she's taking me to school because we woke up late. He gets visibly upset and says he can wait a few minutes since he's already ahead of schedule. My mom says that we won't be ready in a few minutes and tells him to go on ahead. He seemed really angry about this, but turned around, got back on the bus, and left. But at 7 a.m., another bus pulls up to my house. My mom went out to talk to them and came back looking terrified. This is why you never truly know someone. When I was 10 years old, I met my best friend. We were pretty much inseparable. All throughout school, we were always by each other's side. Our last names both started with J, so we had almost every class together. He was a smart kid and a model student. However, his home life wasn't the best. He also had ADHD and was bipolar. My family was like a second family to him. As we grew into adults, our views differed on what we wanted to do with our lives. He had his first child when he was 18 and split up with the child's mom, so the thought of college never sat well with him. He worked a 9-to-5 job instead to support himself. By 21, he met another woman and had a child with her. This time he was doing good. He stayed with her and was taking care of both of his children. I was really proud of him for stepping up and getting his life together. Suddenly, something inside him flipped like a switch. He randomly up and left that woman and moved to another state. I hadn't spoken to him for 2 months after he did this. One late night, I was woken up by a phone call from his mother saying that he was in jail. I asked what for and she told me that he raped a 15-year-old girl. He was caught and sent to jail. He was serving 2 years behind bars only because there were texts from that girl saying that she was 18 years old. 2.5 years went by when he finally got out. I told him he could stay with me until he was back on his feet, but he refused. Then things took a dark turn.
Crazy ass story time about how I almost got away with sneaking out. A little background information. It was the summer of my sophomore year in high school, and my parents are super strict. Like, they had a tracker on my phone, they had a tracker in my car, they have cameras all over my house, and my curfew was 7:30 even on weekends. Well, this boy that I really liked was throwing this party. And I begged my parents to go, and of course they said no. So my friends and I came up with this elaborate plan on how I was going to sneak out of my house and go to this party. Well, one of my friend's brothers had his license. So at 11 o'clock, after everybody fell asleep, they parked in my neighbor's driveway.
Before everybody fell asleep, I made sure to put my ladder up to my window from my bathroom. And because it was in the back of the house, there were really no cameras around there. Well, skip ahead, I couldn't get down the ladder. So my friend's brother had to come around and try to move the ladder. But I was still too scared to go down the ladder by myself. So her brother crawled up the ladder. And once he was on the roof, he tried to help me get down. Well, then he fell like for part 2.
This is why karma has no deadline. I'm a middle school dropout and I became a depressed shut-in from the age of 14 to 20. When I was 20 years old, I got a dog who completely helped me turn my life around. I named him Sherlock, and because of him, I started going outside more to take him on walks. Then I got my GED and started going to college with the intent of giving him a better life. I was 24 and living at home with my brother and my father. Around this time, my brother got a girlfriend. A week into their relationship, Sherlock bit her ankle. It didn't break skin or do serious damage, but everything went downhill because of this. My brother and his girlfriend plotted to kill my dog and throw his body into the river. However, my brother couldn't bring himself to do it and told me everything, followed by breaking up with his girlfriend. A week later, she was kicked out from her residence and my brother ran to her rescue. After they got back together, she would call me using his phone to threaten and scare me into thinking that she would murder Sherlock. I put Sherlock in a training class to sort out his biting issues, and he made major improvements. I was stressed and always kept him locked in my room while I was at work for fear of my brother getting to him. I told my brother that I was actively looking for an apartment and would be moving out soon. However, one day when I came home from work, Sherlock was gone and so was my brother.
Story time! Okay, so me and my boyfriend have been dating for 2 years and a few months already. And lately I've been noticing that he wouldn't let me do anything on his phone. Like, for example, take pictures or videos of us, like literally nothing. So one thing to know is that I always go with him to his practices. So while he's practicing, he always gives me his phone and I always watch in the stands. So this one day I went to his practice and as always he gave me his phone. That's when I thought it would be a perfect time to check his phone. I did my Face ID and it didn't work. I put in the password and it also didn't work. So at this point I was already getting really mad. That's when I also noticed that his notifications said notification when it popped up. He had changed the settings on his notifications. So instead of it showing the name and what they said, it just shows notification from this app. So then after I seen that, I was really fed up. So then after his practice, I asked him why he's been acting so funny lately and I ended up confronting him about his phone. And of course, he tried to play it off and said it was nothing. We ended up getting into a huge fight and we didn't talk for 2 weeks. Fast forward a bit and I was going to a quince that weekend.